Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. The Bassmaster Classic getting ready to kick off here real soon. I figured I would do a little bit of a prediction episode, one to talk about maybe some of the baits that I see excelling, as well as maybe some of the anglers to watch out for. So yeah, if you're picking a fantasy team or you're looking for a little bit of help, these might be some of the guys that you want to take. Now, having said that, I don't know anything about the lake. I've not been to this lake. I've never fished it. It's at Ray Roberts, otherwise known as Ray Bob, as some people like to call it. Looks like a pretty typical Texas fishery. And I would say more than anything, this tournament is going to be dictated potentially by the weather. And what I mean by that is we've had some really unusually cool weather. So we had really warm weather in Texas, cold front, and tournaments getting ready to start. And it's not going to be like super hot, but it's going to be in the 70-degree mark. So you may see some fish pushing from the pre-spawn stages to the bank. So we're going to see a little bit of a potential for some transition. I also think we're going to have some pretty strong winds, and those strong winds could limit the scopers. And the scopers, in my opinion, probably will dominate this event. But having said that, if there is a push to the bank and that is windy, you may actually see some typical standard fishing play a much bigger part than you normally would. But this lake being a typical Texas lake, you're going to see a lot of your drains playing. There's a lot of standing timber in this lake, in some areas at least. So I do think you're going to see a lot of fish that are positioned in and around some of that standing timber. If you asked me, I think the winners will probably be scoping around drains and some standing timber. And that's probably where they're going to catch those staging big pre-spawn females. I think you might see some pretty big bags. You might see some people bring in really, really big bags and then kind of coast the rest of the way with some just overall decent bags. But I think it's going to be a scoping event. I think you're going to see jerkbaits be a really big player. I think you're going to see the jig head minnow be a really big player. And at the same time, I think you're also probably going to see some bigger crankbaits and potentially some spoons where like maybe the people aren't necessarily scoping fish that are actually suspended high up in the water column, but they're really fishing more of your hard spots. So they're using their side imaging. They're going to find some hard spots. They cast at it and they're going to be able to pull fish off of those hard spots. But when doing that, you might see the spoon, a bigger spoon, and you might see some of your deeper diving crankbaits play a bigger part than we've seen in the past. Now, having said that, with what I opened this with by saying we may have some fish that are in transitional phases and some fish that are up closer to the bank, I kind of do feel like we might see a swim jig bite develop. And I also think you might see a pretty good lipless crankbait bite develop for some of those shallower fish. Those are two great baits when you have some windier conditions, but the fish are up shallow. The same thing, your vibrating jigs could be a major player too. There may be a few fish on beds. If there are, somebody like Johnny Cox might be able to go out there and get it done with some bedfish. I don't know that I see that being a big enough factor for a multi-day tournament. I think he might be able to go out and make it work for the first day, but I don't know if 3 days is going to be able to compete doing that. But if they're up shallow, my buddy Johnny is definitely going to be one to watch out for. You've got a lot of really good Texas fishermen that are in this event. Guys like Lee Livesey, Keith Combs, Dakota Bear, Chris Zaldane has talked quite a bit about how this tournament for him, he's had his eyesights on for a while now. So those guys are definitely going to have an advantage. You know, as an angler that goes to Texas, it seems like, you know, at least once a year, Texas is its own beast. There's not that many other places in the country that's set up like Texas, in my opinion. It's a very much a lowland impoundment that's like very much drain based. A lot of flat water, and the Texas anglers are going to have a leg up in terms of just the familiarity with that type of fishery. There's a lot of anglers, including myself, that can oftentimes feel pretty overwhelmed when heading to an impoundment like that. So having the experience, and I don't know that these guys have a ton of experience on this fishery, But just having the Texas experience is going to be a major factor for them. But like I said in the beginning too, I think it's going to be dominated by your scopers. So it would not surprise me to see some of the younger anglers, especially some of the ones that qualified through like the opens, be a major factor in this. I think you could have some guys like Tucker Smith. I think you could see Emil Wagner, Easton Fothergill. I mean, those guys are all straight up ninjas. And I mean, very much could be a major factor in this. You know, I think you're going to see, I think you're going to see the majority of the guys in the top 10 probably doing very well with the scope. I really do. I think if I had to pick one bait, I feel like the jerk bait might actually be the winner in terms of the bait that's used. It's had really good performances in Texas specifically. So you've got a lot of shallower water, and I tend to think the jerk bait is a little bit better when you're talking about fishing really shallow water, especially if you've got some windy conditions. I feel like the jerkbait's a better go-to than the jig head minnow, in my opinion. But we'll see how this one plays out. You know, I think overall weights are going to be pretty solid for the guys who are at the top. There's probably going to be a lot of guys that struggle. I don't think it's a fishery that's full of lots and lots of fish. So I think you're going to see a pretty decent average size fish, but I don't think you're going to see, I think you're seeing a good portion of the field not coming in with a limit. Let's put it that way. I think it's going to be overall potentially a pretty tough fishery. Plus, the practice period has been pretty unusual. I mean, there's been some pretty crazy pictures of the guys fishing in extremely strong winds that created a dust storm. So it's almost like the sky was a red sky. You know, guys had their boats getting trashed pretty good when they were out there just trying to get around. So I don't think practice was all that productive, at least several of the days for some of the guys. So from that standpoint, it's just going to be a little bit tougher as well. I'm excited to see it. I'll be down there. I'll be all over the expo. I'm guessing we're going to be at the weigh-in one of the days. I know Hank wants to go to that. So we'll be all over the place. If you happen to see me, grab me, say hi. And I'm excited to see how this one pans out. I think it's going to be, man, I think we could be surprised. It could be somebody who is really comes out of nowhere. I mean, this is going to be one of those tournaments where I do think you could find a one cast deal and win the tournament off of that one cast. So when that potentially could come about, and it's anybody's game. So we'll find out. Let me know in the comment section, who do you think's going to win and what bait is going to be the go-to bait? That'll be the question. So put it in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all the support. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.